Hi, and welcome to the Flip Learning Network's Flipped Educator Spotlight Series. My name is Kelly Walsh, and I'm the Community Administrator for the Flip Learning Network. The Flip Learning Network is the original online hub of the Flip Learning community. We're a not-for-profit organization whose mission includes providing access to a wealth of tools, resources, and professional development opportunities. We hope to help educators build on the possibilities inherent in flipped teaching and learning, and to explore evolving student-centered instructional practices. We invite educators everywhere to explore the resources available at fliplearning.org and to contribute to the discussion through comments, questions, and by submitting your own posts. Indeed, the site is built on contributions from flipped educators like yourself who write blog posts. We also encourage you to join us on Slack, where we have an ongoing dialogue.
Today's interview with teacher Natalie Stotz will be conducted by Kate Baker. Kate is a respected educator who's received many accolades, and I invite you to come learn more about her on the fliplearning.org board page, or to visit Kate's blog, which you can find at katebakerbyodlit.blogspot.com. So welcome, Kate and Natalie.
Welcome. My name is Kate Baker. I'm a ninth grade English teacher and on the Flipped Learning Network's board. And I'm here today with Natalie Stotz from Maine. Hi, Natalie.
Hi, Kate.
So tell us about your background as a teacher and what you teach and where you teach and what's inspired you to become a teacher.
Okay. I teach at Windham Christian Academy in Windham, Maine. It's a K through 12 school. I am in the high school. I teach English, government, economics, theology. Some years I teach world history or American history. This year I am teaching 9th and 10th grade English, government and economics to 11th and 12th graders, and theology to 9th and 10th and 11th graders. We're a very small school. We have 19 students in the high school. And so what I teach varies from year to year depending on what we need. So I came from a family of public school teachers. So even though I'm teaching in Christian school, in the private school now, I have been teaching in private school for almost 20 years. I have a great deal of appreciation and understanding of the public school settings as well. And I always knew that I wanted to be a teacher. I'm kind of wired for it, I guess. And so it is definitely a life's calling for me.
That always makes me wonder too about how many of us come from families, you know, of teachers, because my parents also were educators as well. So, you know, it's, again, I've always called it like the family business.
Yeah.
When it comes to teaching.
Yeah, that's my experience.
When I always think of you first as an ELA teacher, but then listening to you rattle off all the subjects, I'm like, oh, wow, how does she do it? So, I mean, I would imagine that flipping has got to help manage a lot of that content because, yeah, okay, 19 students in the school isn't so bad, but that's a lot of content to cover.
Yeah. Well, so we have one other humanities teacher. So she and I divide up the responsibilities with teaching English and history. So like she's teaching Brit Lit this year to the 11th and 12th graders. So I just have the one English class. It's a combined 9th and 10th grade English class. So and she's teaching world history to the 9th and 10th graders. I'm teaching government and economics to the 11th and 12th graders. So when we got to the point where we were able to get a second teacher, it definitely helped with it, because when I first started teaching here, I was teaching all of the history, all of the English to all of the high school. And that we did some combined grades, and there were some years that we didn't have kids in every grade, but it still was really overwhelming. And so and actually that was early on was when I first learned about flipped learning and started pursuing it, trying to understand it and implementing it myself in my class, because of, you know, just the vast range that I was responsible for. That it was being able to, you know, finding that it was kind of like this moment of going, ooh, there's a way to make my workload a little bit more manageable. And that was a good direction to begin taking.
So what was the first things that you started to do in terms of flipping, though? Like after you found it, what then action steps did you take?
So when I first, it was one of these things that came across my Twitter feed with the hashtag, and I'm like, what is that? And so I started exploring it, and I was teaching American history and world history and world lit and American lit at the time. And so I started with my history classes, and I did my lectures, what would have been my lectures with the note taking, with the videos. So that was my first attempt. So here I'm the idea of it, I latched onto right away, and the idea of being able to, because every time I gave a lecture with notes, I was like, well, they could just as easily read the book. Why do they need me to tell them these facts? And I was always frustrated with that delivery piece and feeling like it was a waste of my time with the kids. And so that aspect of the flipped class, I latched onto right away. And so I started doing I do my PowerPoints with the notes of what I normally would have written on the board, and recorded myself giving it. And so I was trying to learn how to do the videos at the same time that I'm trying to understand how flipped class works and how to make sure the kids are doing it and they're doing follow-up. So when I first started doing it, it was the lecture notes for world history and American history from the textbook. And I would use Google Forms for, I would embed a link to a Google form under the video for them to fill out after they watched the video to show that they had watched the video. And it sort of worked, but it was a struggle for me and for my students. So it was like, I really only did that 1 year. And I had a few kids who would go back and review the videos before a test, but not very many of them would take advantage of that. They did have fun trying to pause the video with my face in interesting contortions. They, told me about that. But a lot of the things that people talk about, the questions that they have or the struggles that they have with, everyone being able to access at home. The kids actually following through with watching it. I had all of the same struggles, and I did try to address that some, but I think it was partway through the year that I learned about flipped learning, and I did the videos. So I kind of continued it a little bit through that year, and honestly, that was the only time I've ever really done the videos of recording myself to give lecture. And I think it was actually the next year that we hired another teacher, and she took over the history. So okay. I was doing just English. And so how I flip English is so different from how I would flip history.
Yeah, because in English, I mean, you and I have talked about this extensively, and thank heavens for Google tools just in general, because yeah. I remember, some of my favorite moments, and again, you and I still have not met in person, face to face.
I know we need to change that.
I know, we do.
On vacation again.
I need to get up to Maine. But, I mean, some of my favorite memories is just working with you on Google Docs, like sitting on my couch at home. Yeah, my husband's, watching a hockey game, but then I'm sitting there on my computer, working with you in crafting the curriculum,
right.
And that collaboration, I don't know how the heck any of us would have been able to do that prior to Google Docs. But,
yeah.
And it's, so what were some of the specific things, though, with like the video and the Google Form workflow, if we could go back to that for a minute? Like, what was the specific, like, did it not work well in how you were delivering the video and form to them, or it just wasn't enough of a follow-through activity to see that they watched the video?
Part of it was my inexperience with making the videos.
Okay.
Because I was, I had never done screencasting and videoing with myself of, that sort of thing before. So I was trying to learn that for myself while trying to make these videos. And, I had a couple of videos that were too long. And it was the trying to chunk the information in manageable pieces for them. That I struggled with learning to do that effectively. And I found that it took so much time for me to prep my slides and record the videos. And, and I would record where I would start and something would happen. I'd have to stop. I'd have to redo it. So just the amount of time that it took for me to do the whole process, I just didn't have the time to do that a lot. And then I think one of the other, really an obstacle for me with this was more of a personal thing. I have a tendency to rush ahead of myself and rush ahead with my learning. And so I've been learning how to kind of rein myself in, because I learned something new like Flip Class, and oh my goodness, this is so cool, and we can do this, we can do this. And before I completely have my head around how to do it effectively, I implement it. And so, and there are times when that's okay, because you learn as you go and you work out the kinks, and that's necessary. But I think when I first jumped into Flip Learning and using the videos, that I didn't have enough of the concept, understanding it myself, to be able to establish the culture that I needed in the classroom to be effective. Because this was so totally new to the kids. They're used to the teacher standing in the front of the room in classes, the teacher dictating the notes, and then we answer the comprehension questions at home, or we write the essay, or we do the reading, and then we hear it again in class. And so it was such a different structure for the kids, but I had not laid a good foundation for the culture of the classroom, of how it needed to run and what was expected of them. I think I also had some issues with the not having the space at school to have asynchronous learning going on. Where, I actually early on, when I first started learning about Flip Class and trying to get my head around it, I met with Lindsay Boyer-Cole from North Conway, and because she's like an hour from me, and we connected on Twitter about Flip Class. And so one February vacation, we met at a coffee shop in North Conway, New Hampshire, and she told me about how she flips her biology classes, and that really helped me to get an understanding of how, what it actually looks like. And I don't remember where else I was going.
No, so, how long ago was that, though, when you were first learning about the videos? And because it's been...
So that was probably
4 or 5 years?
Yeah. I think that was probably my second or third year here. So it was like 2012, 2013.
Mm-hmm. So, but if you make a video now, though, like, you're much more proficient, and if you need to, you can do it.
I haven't done. I have more familiarity with the platform, like using a screencasting platform and doing slideshows, and so there are aspects of it that wouldn't take me as long now. Right. And I also have a better understanding of how to decide how to, what information to convey and how to do that. And for follow-up, like, I had been doing, I hadn't had a website prior to, I hadn't really had a website prior to doing that. So I was trying to build a website to host everything and get all that set up. And so, and a lot of those platforms have changed. I think I started using Google Sites when I was doing that. I find Google Sites really frustrating to work with. But there's a lot of other options now that are easier to work with. So just how technology has been changing would make it so much easier.
Yeah, I mean, Google Classroom and Google, I mean, even Edmodo or Schoology, any of those social learning platforms you know, have definitely made the workflow a heck of a lot easier. But let's talk about flipping English, which, I mean, you and I both know there's not as much video creation with flipping English. Like, okay, yeah, might make a screencast to introduce them to, like, Shakespeare's biography, but I mean, so much of the skills can be done differently with different tools. So I know you use Membeam.
Oh, I love Membeam.
So let's talk about Membeam.
So I have this is my third year using Membeam, Membeam.com, and it is personalized vocabulary instruction. So the students have accounts. They when they first start using it, they do a calibration, and it takes them through a series of exercises of identifying words. And one of the really cool things with how they do it is they'll throw nonsense words in there to see if the kids, because like some kids will just click through, and so they, if they can identify and kind of reason out if a word is actually a word or not. So it gives a pretty accurate indicator of what their vocabulary level is, what words they know. And then when they start training, and there are several different modes for learning the words. So that there's a video that shows the word being used in context, and sometimes it's Star Wars, sometimes it's Star Trek, sometimes it's some other pop culture TV show. They have word maps. They have the word used in a sentence. So there's all these different modes of learning, and they have to interact with that page, and then they're tested, they're quizzed on it, and it's all based on brain research of how we learn. And so they do these snippets of training with the vocabulary. And I assign them to do that practice on their own. That's an ongoing, standing homework assignment. They are required to do 45 minutes of training a week.
And I like that you use the word training and that it's not homework. Like it, I mean, because really you could do the training anywhere. Do you build in class time for the training, or that's primarily outside of your class?
It's primarily outside of the class. I structure my English class most of the time as a workshop. Cool. So we have, like if they've finished the task that we're doing that day, or they have a little downtime, they know that they have the choice of independent reading or getting some Membeam practice in. So they have 7 days to do 45 minutes, and the optimal practice time, and Membeam has a lot of information and resources to support teachers in getting this established, and they recommend 3 15-minute sessions at 3 different times. So the kids will, they'll have 5-10 minutes, 15. They'll pull up their Membeam, log on, and get some practice in. And so, very seldom do I have dedicated time in class, but it's an option of something that they can do if they've finished the task that we're working on that day. Right now, with this year's class, our first semester focused on speech and composition. And so there's more often that downtime because we're doing writing workshop. And so if they have finished their draft, or they've finished the lesson and working on what we're doing that day, they are more apt to have time. Next semester, we have exams, midterms coming up in about a week and a half. And next semester, our focus is going to be literature. So that's going to change things a little bit because we'll be doing a little bit of traditional literature instruction and discussion. but we'll still be doing reading workshop with that. So we do quizzes in class.
Okay.
Every 2 weeks, I have a scheduled quiz, and they are supposed to bring their device. We're a bring your own device school, so they're supposed to bring their device. And the first thing we do in class, we do a writing warm up, and then we do the Membeam quiz. They log on, they take their quiz. As soon as they're done their quiz, they do independent reading. Some of them will start in and do some more practice when they're done their quiz while they're waiting for everybody to finish.
Wow.
Because they want to get their minutes in.
Okay.
So what I do is I used to just track and grade their minutes. So it was purely compliance. You did your 45 minutes or you didn't. And so if you did 45 minutes, you got 45 points. And it was a percentage. And so, and then if they did more than 45 minutes, that was extra credit. So, and my grade book allows me to put in up to double the point value.
Okay.
So they could do 90 minutes and have like, a 200%, and then they'd be off the hook because it would make up for, they could get away with it. And they also I was tracking Tuesday to Tuesday. And so they would do all their practice on Tuesday and be done for 2 weeks.
Oh.
And so what was happening was they weren't progressing through the vocabulary lists.
Okay.
So now I do Wednesday to Tuesday, so they can't double up. And this year I've been tracking their accuracy. So Membeam allows you to see all these really great analytics on the students practicing. And we can look at how many words they got wrong, how many they got right, how many questions, then you get the total questions that they answered, their accuracy. It checks, how many they skipped, words that they said that they knew or whatever. So you have all this great analytical data for their learning progress. So we look at how many words they got right, how many words they got wrong. We look at their accuracy, their minutes, how many days they practiced. And I keep a chart, and the kids have a copy of the chart. And so we're constantly having conversations about what they're doing with their learning. And so when I have a kid who they have continually low accuracy, we can talk about, okay, well, you have low accuracy right now because look at how many new words you got. When you get more new words, your accuracy is going to be lower. Or so you really dig into what's going on with their learning. And at first, it's been a little bit of struggle, but now they're finally looking more at their learning and less at whether or not they got their minutes in.
Oh, I love that. Just that metacognitive piece, because it's so easy to say, like, the website or the video becomes like a babysitter. Oh, here,
Right.
go do it. But then it's so vitally integral and important to look at what are you getting out of it. And it's not just the data of the score, but that conversation piece. Wow, talk about culture.
Yeah.
When you can look at the analysis of a student's performance, and then the student can understand, because they do get so fixated on scores and grades, that this shifts that to the learning. Oh, I love that.
Well, and a couple other cool things that come out of it is that I'll have kids, they'll be reading a book or something, and they're like, oh, that's a Membeam word. Like they recognize they're seeing the words come up in real world settings or in other classes that are, and so which is and that's a piece of why I like this so much, because it's highly personalized. It's words that they need to learn. Each kid has a different list. There's a set. The site has a set list, and you can see what the lists are of all the words. But what each kid has to study is personalized to what the ones that they haven't learned yet. So rather than me saying, "Here's your 15 words this week," they're just working at their own pace on the words that they need to learn. And if there's a word that comes up that they know, they can mark it that they know it, and they'll still get tested on it, but they don't have to spend time studying it.
Right.
And so that personalized piece has made a huge difference, because like I have, I already said it's a small school, so in my 9th and 10th grade English class, I have 11 kids, and I have a wide range of ability levels. I have a couple of kids that are gifted, and their vocabulary levels are up on the 11th, 12th grade end of things. I have other kids that are, their family, he's a native English speaker, but their parents are Chinese immigrants. And so, his parents speak English, but they speak Chinese at home too. And, I see with him some of those ESL things that you see in ESL learners, even though he's native to the United States. And so, I have this huge range of vocabulary needs that with a traditional system or a book, I couldn't meet. And so I love that about being able to, and then being able to say, okay, you study your list at home, and, it's probably, takes us 10 minutes to do the quiz maybe. And the other time that I'm taking out of class to spend on vocabulary, unless we have to spend a long time talking about stop gaming the system, we're not having to spend a lot of time dealing with the logistics of doing vocabulary. We're able to just use it.
And if you think about like why have we done vocab the way that we've traditionally done it, with your vocab book and your traditional lists, where it's the one controlled list, because that was the most easiest and manageable thing for a teacher to do. Right. With technology, I have 130 students. There is no way I have the time to be able to flip it and differentiate it for each kid. So the power of technology and Membeam, like, kudos to them for creating such a project. And it's also based on research too, with that brain bit. Like, it's not just here's a bunch of words. Like it just sounds fascinating.
Everything from the mode of studying to the length of studying is all based on how our brains learn, how we learn best. And it will even say, you've been, time for a break, and they'll have a little pause, or, it's a fabulous website.
Oh yeah. It's not free though, right?
No, it's not. I don't remember what the cost is. They do, I think that it's a year subscription, and they work really well with schools. Like, we're a small school, and so it's like, we only need this small amount, and most price rates are for, when you've got hundreds, or you're using for hundreds, and I'm like, we need 20. And so they're like, okay, let's work with you, and this is what we'll help you out. And so I don't remember what the tiers are, but it is so, if a district is able to have the funds, it's so much more cost effective than buying books, vocabulary words. And the thing is that the kids, I've been using it for 3 years, so my seniors, this is their third year using it. It just picks up where they left off. When kids come up, our middle school teacher was using it for a while, so all of my kids the last couple of years, they came up to the freshman class, they had used it as middle schoolers, and it just transferred over to my account, no problem. And they just picked up where they left off.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I would imagine too that the company, if it's willing to work with you on the financial side of things, I imagine that there's also an open dialogue as far as like letting them know what works and what doesn't.
Yep. Yes, they're very responsive when you have questions. I had a couple early on. Some of the kids were saying, "Oh, well, I clicked on this, but it recorded this answer," or they were saying that there were problems. So I just contacted their help desk and said, this is what the kids said happened. Could you look into it? And they can actually go in and see what activity the kids did. Big Brother's watching.
Yes.
That's what I tell the kids too. And so they're able to, so if there's a question about the wording of a question or an issue with that, they look into it right away and get right back to you. Right before Christmas, I had a phone conversation. They contacted me to get feedback on how they were touching base with the teachers that use it to get feedback on what was working, what wasn't working, what questions do we have, were there things that we would like to see that we aren't seeing, so they are very interested in working with teachers. I think, you can get a personal account with them, a paid personal account. This is really good for, like, if you're doing, you're having to study for a test like a GRE or, something like that, you could do it. Or if you just, are a word nerd and want to improve your vocabulary. So they do have personal accounts that you can pay for. But I think schools, K-12 schools, or especially middle and high schools, are their biggest clientele, and so they're very interested in working with the teachers.
Yay! Well, I can't wait to hear more about it, and we'll have to also do some more conversation another time about some other ways that we flip ELA.
Yeah, because I haven't started it yet, so it's okay that we're not spending much time on it. But I'm going to be starting to flip grammar using EnglishGrammar101.com.
Oh, nice.
So we'll talk again, and I can tell you how that's going.
Awesome. Yeah, I haven't. We used it last year, and I need to get it back into the repertoire. Is the grammar flip?
Yeah.
Try that out again. Because I know they've made some updates to this site, and that's, technology is always changing. So,
right.
So I'll have to keep you updated on that one. And then just the other one, like my students have started this week with reading in Actively Learn.
Yeah.
I am so impressed with how much that platform has changed when I first looked at it years ago, because I know you and I both used Curriculate for years for digital reading, but then the stuff in Actively Learn, I've been really impressed with just some of the features, and even on the free side of things, where it's just me having my students read a public domain text, like the Declaration of Independence, and just being able to keep an eye on their learning and to help facilitate their learning and teach them about accountability and self-pacing and metacognitive, and processing when you're working, not just hear, read, and answer comprehension questions.
Right.
But yeah, we'll have to talk about Actively Learn too for flipped reading, because that's, it's always hard when tech tools either change or they fold, and it's nice to be able to find other tools to replace the ones that you no longer have.
Right. Yeah, we're gonna the Actively Learn. I was just showing it to my co-teacher, and because she's doing Britlit, but I'm going to start working with a couple of her students who have a scheduling conflict next semester. So I'll be doing Britlit with 2 kids, and we wanted to do Frankenstein. And we don't have the books. We don't have any money to buy books, so that's why I tweeted out yesterday. What are people using? What are you using now? And so I was looking at Actively Learn, and the very first item in the catalog when I looked for novels was Frankenstein. I'm like, yes! So we're going to be doing that and starting that in a couple weeks with the kids. So I'm excited to start using that, learning more about Actively Learn, and be interested to hear what you're doing with it.
It's pretty much kind of the same processing, just, it's just replacing Curriculate with Actively Learn. You know, not much of my particular routine has to change. I do have to go back in though and look at the content and the questions and kind of rebuild some of that old stuff that I lost. But
Oh yeah.
oh,
All that work. Oh,
I know all that work. But I know Curriculate was bought out by another company, so the plan is to release it next year.
Yeah.
But that's on the horizon in the future. You know, when
Yeah.
we need to find
Yeah.
things that work for now.
Right.
So, but I wanted to say thank you very much for joining us on this FLN Spotlight.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking me to. It was fun.
Awesome.